Good morning, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Cub Home Energy Savings webinar. We're going to get started in just a couple of minutes, so please just bear with us. Good morning, everybody. We're just going to get started in about a minute. All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to the Cub webinar this morning on Thursday, April 30th. I trust everyone can hear me, but I've got a couple of colleagues on the line here who will keep me apprised if we run into any snags with my audio or video. But my name is Sarah Moskowitz. I'm the Outreach Director of the Citizens Utility Board, or CUB, and I am with you today to talk a little bit about ways to save energy and save money on your utility bills. Anais and Marvin, is everything showing up and sounding okay?
Yes.
Everything is good.
Super. Thank you so much. Just a couple of notes of housekeeping. We are recording this webinar, and everyone who registered will receive a link to view the recording afterwards. I'm also going to reference a lot of programs and a lot of information, and that follow-up email that you'll receive afterwards will contain links to the appropriate fact sheets and whatnot on our website. So don't feel like you need to, scramble to take notes on any of this stuff, because the info is going to be out there and we'll share it around. And then finally, I expect there will be some questions. We will have some time for Q&A at the end. I suggest typing your questions into the chat box on the left on your screen. You should see a little control panel there where there's a section that says chat. And if you can't see any space to type underneath where it says chat, you just click that little arrow next to it, and then their space will open up where it says type your message here. And my colleagues, Marvin and Anais, will be monitoring that chat box, and when I'm done with the formal part of the presentation, they will read those questions and we'll try to get them answered for you before we wrap up for the day. But with that, I'm just going to dive right in and overcome any weirdness I feel at just talking to myself here in my apartment. Thank you again for tuning in. This is the third of the CUB series of energy savings webinars we've done. We did one about solar. Oh, and the other one we did actually was about cable and telephone bills savings and cutting down on robocalls. And if you didn't get to tune into those, you can go on our website and register for them, and you will be able to watch recordings of those as well. But first, a little background about CUB and who we are and why you should trust what I have to say at all. We were created in the early 80s to represent the interests of utility ratepayers across the state of Illinois. We were created by an act of the Illinois General Assembly, but we are actually not associated with Illinois state government whatsoever. We are a standalone, nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that basically tries to serve as a voice for small business and residential utility customers. We work on all different levels of utility oversight. We work before the Illinois Commerce Commission, that's the state regulatory body that is supposed to be overseeing the utilities. We work in Springfield before the General Assembly to try to get more consumer-friendly laws passed, or sometimes we have to prevent consumer unfriendly laws from being passed. And sometimes we will have to take our work to the courts, especially if a company has done something particularly egregious. Say we start getting a lot of complaints about a company that has been misleading folks. In the past, we have worked with other stakeholders to take them to court and get refunds for folks. And that brings me to my next point, which is our hotline. I know you all are going to remember every single word I tell you this morning, but if you forget anything, please don't forget this. We are here to help you. Even in these days where we are all doing our best to shelter in place, Cub's office is closed, but we are still working. We are all working from home and our hotline is up and running. We're here to help you. So if you ever have any kind of question or complaint about a utility issue and you can't get your question answered or your issue resolved by calling the utility, please feel free to call us. The phone number is right here. It will also be on all the fact sheets that we send around after this, and we will do our best to help you. If you call during normal business hours, you will reach a live human being. She's really nice. Her name is Jan, and you can tell her what your issue is, and she will put you through to one of our consumer rights counselors. And they're also really nice, and they can tell you what your rights are under state law. They can troubleshoot what might be going on with the utility. So, say you get a, I don't know, use your imagination. Say you get a really crazy gas bill. You don't know what it's about, and you call the gas company, and they just say, that's what your meter says, pay it now. Well, we might be able to get to the bottom of what's going on with that. And if necessary, we can get in touch with a higher office at the utility on your behalf. Our rule is give the utility one chance to fix your problem or answer your question. And if they blow that chance, then call us. And when you're calling us, you are helping us too. You help us stay relevant because although I am a utility customer and all of my colleagues at Cub are utility customers, there's only about 26 of us on staff. So we really count on folks out in Illinois to keep us apprised of what's happening out here. So if we start getting a lot of complaints about a particular company, well, maybe we need to host a press conference to warn folks about scam or an issue out there. Or maybe we need to send our lobbyist, Brian, down to Springfield to try to get a law passed that'll bring this under control. We wouldn't know to take those actions if we didn't hear from folks. So feel free to call us. If we can help you. And even if we can't help you with your individual issue in that moment, we will add your experience, your complaint to our arsenal of complaints that we can then use down the road. As I mentioned, we are open for business, even though our office is itself closed. All Cub staff we're still working full time, just safely from home. Normally, this would be our busy time of year. We'd be doing all kinds of outreach events. Spring, April, May, super busy for us normally. In the absence of in-person events, we are putting on webinars such as this. We also have introduced a great program that we're calling a virtual utility bill clinic. And this is a service if you would like one of our experts to look at your bill and make sure there aren't any problems or you're not being overcharged. You can take a picture or a scan of your bill and email it to this email address here, ubc@citizensutilityboard.org. And within a couple of days, one of our counselors will call you up and talk about what we see. And see if there are ways for you to bring it down. Because especially since we're all spending more time at home, one thing we are concerned about is the financial impact of that with regards to higher energy usage. But I'll also show you in a few slides down the road here how you can decode your own bills, hopefully. And then finally, our website is full of all kinds of great information. We update it almost every day. We do a lot of media and publications. So if you ever want to know what all those little charges are on any of your bills, we have a fact sheet about it. Feel free to go in there and root around because there's a ton of great info on there. So this is what people think of Cub generally. To the extent that they're familiar with us, they think of us as kind of a pain in the utilities backsides, always going after them. And this is true. This is our bread and butter. We are always fighting these guys. And I myself have worked at Cub for, in July, it will have been 20 years. So it is basically part of my DNA now to kind of be very mistrustful of what the big gas, electric, and phone companies are up to. However, I've got to say there are actually a lot of things to be happy about in utility policy here in the state of Illinois. In my time, I have seen a lot of positive developments and a lot more options for little residential customers like you and me when it comes to saving on energy bills in particular. This right here is a picture of me at an event a couple of years ago. This was an event in the city of Chicago. I'm entertaining this adorable kid here, but in the background, that's her mom actually signing up for Commonwealth Edison's peak time rebate program, which is a great program. We encourage people to sign up for it. And it didn't exist a few years ago. It's a result of some great policies that were put into place over the past 15 years. Now we have options that will help us save money on our bills if we are able to use energy in off-peak times. And don't worry, I will explain more about that very shortly. But first, a quick civics lesson. I just want to mention that the great utility programs that I am about to talk about don't just happen by accident. They are not just gifts from the heavens. It's not like the utilities were born to introduce programs for their customers to help their customers use less of the commodity. No, that's not how it works. Good utility policy involves a lot of hard work behind the scenes. We had to work really hard to get laws passed, and then the work isn't over. Once the law is passed requiring a utility to encourage, say, energy efficiency or renewables, then there's a whole bunch of additional work that has to go into implementing that. Excuse me. We've got to design the program, we've got to bring it to the public, we've got to learn from mistakes and redesign, and it's a constant work in progress. This right here is my timeline showing, oh, excuse me, little frog in my throat. My timeline showing kind of the arc of utility policy over the past couple decades, starting with the 1997 law that froze electric rates for 10 years following. When that rate freeze expired, came the Illinois Power Agency Act. That was the first time that the utilities were required to encourage efficiency. Basically, that law established the energy efficiency standards and the renewable standards. So that's around when you started seeing your gas and electric companies offering energy efficiency programs to their customers. And then the 2011 bill, that of course is what gave rise to the smart meters that ComEd and Ameren have installed across the state. Excuse me. And then in 2016, the Future Energy Jobs Act, that fixed the renewable standards and increased energy efficiency. And oh my goodness, one moment. Okay. That's better. I just alarmed my cat. Okay, go back to sleep, kitty. The Future Energy Jobs Act of 2016, you may have noticed a lot of solar going up in your area, or you may have even been approached by solar salesmen. That is a direct result of this law, which basically increased our renewable goals. It increased energy efficiency and enabled the ability to participate in community solar, all these things I'm going to talk about in a second. And then finally, CUB is a proud member of the Illinois Clean Jobs Coalition. We are trying to get some new legislation passed that basically builds on the progress of the Future Energy Jobs Act. We're trying to make sure that the especially the renewable options, continue into the future. And this bill also looks at the effects of electric vehicles on the grid and requires regulators to kind of look at ways to make sure that an influx of electric vehicles doesn't have a negative impact on rates. We're going to see how this goes. Of course, things are kind of up in the air in this age of the pandemic, but there are some important pieces in here that we hope don't ultimately fall by the wayside. But I know you're tuned in today to talk mostly about what you can do now to save energy. And also maybe just because you're super bored because you've been sitting at home, and I don't blame you for that. I hope I can be at least somewhat entertaining. So I'm going to talk over the course of this presentation about some of the energy efficiency programs that are available. I'm also going to talk about the programs that are available to ComEd and Ameren customers that encourage you to use less energy at peak times. I'm going to talk a little bit, I can't help it, about some of those alternative energy suppliers that are still out there, especially going to pick on the ones that market themselves as offering green energy. And then finally, hopefully we'll have a little bit of time to talk about renewable energy because of some great policies that I mentioned earlier. It is now more possible than ever to take advantage of renewable energy like solar at home and actually see a great economic benefit for that. But first, this is why you got up this morning and turned on your computer and logged in, right? You wanted to look at some pictures of some bills. This would not be a Cub presentation if I did not show you some pictures of some bills. So I mentioned earlier our utility bill clinics and our virtual utility bill clinic that we are offering right now. You can send pictures of your bills to us and we'll take a look. But I'm going to show you basically what we look at when we look at an electric bill. And so this, of course, is a ComEd bill. I'm also going to show you an Ameren bill in a few slides. But generally, when I look at an electric bill, I look at three main things. And so this bill right here is actually belongs to my colleague, Julie. She's our general counsel at Cub. She's our top lawyer, basically. And she's a pretty tough cookie. She allowed me to pick on her bill and her energy usage for the purposes of these presentations. So if this person had come to me to one of our events and sat down with me and showed me her bill, I would first look at who provides her energy. I'm sure all of you have been approached either in person or by phone or in the mail by these alternative energy companies. I even see them at the airport. They market themselves by offering some extra airline miles if you sign up with them. So these guys, I hope all of you know by now that if you hate ComEd or Ameren and you never want to pay them another bill for the rest of your life, switching to another supplier is not going to solve your problem, right? You're always going to have the utility delivering the energy to your home. The only thing that changes is the price you pay for the juice itself. So of course, Julie, who's our general counsel, who's worked at Cub almost as long as I have, does not have an alternative energy supplier on her bill. I can tell by looking at the front, and here on the lower left, it says ComEd provides your energy under the supply section. Notice on the delivery section over here, it says ComEd delivers electricity to your home. That's always going to be the case. ComEd's always in charge of that. If you look at your own bill and you see another company's name here, what you'll want to do is you'll want to look on the back. And you see here, there's another section titled Supply. And you're going to want to look and see how much that company is charging you per kilowatt hour. Now, of course, it's not going to say this company charges blank per kilowatt hour. It's embedded in this little equation here. So it'll show you the number of kilowatt hours you used, times, and then there will be a number. That number is the price per kilowatt hour that that company charges. The ComEd price right now is just over 7 cents per kilowatt hour. If the company that you are with is costing you more than that, then you're going to want to call them and ask them to send you back to ComEd. And that other company's number will show up right there. The second thing I look at when I look at a utility bill is just the usage. Look at this usage chart and try to figure out if it makes sense for a home of your size, family of your size, and what you're doing around the house. And I have been doing this long enough that I can tell a lot about what people are using just by looking at their energy usage charts. So Julie knows I'm going to say this. Her usage is pretty crazy. This is really high usage year round. It's higher than average. I expect to see electric usage in the non-summer months when you're not using your air conditioning of about 600 kilowatt hours or so a month. That's kind of typical. Now, of course, there's no such thing as the perfect typical home. Everybody's usage is a little different. But that's kind of the basic rule of thumb, is about 600 kilowatt hours a month when you're not using your air conditioning. And that's also assuming that you don't heat with electricity. Not many people in ComEd territory do, but there are some. And so, of course, if you're heating with electricity instead of gas, you're going to have pretty high electric bills in the winter. Julie has a NICOR bill. She lives in Arlington Heights. So I know that she does not primarily heat with electricity, but her usage in the non-summer months is pretty high. You see here, May, it was 829 kilowatt hours. April, it was over 1,000 kilowatt hours. Oof, okay. And then in the summer, when we do expect to see higher electric usage, hers is still much higher than we usually would see. A typical single family home, when you're using air conditioning, I'm looking for usage of around 900 kilowatt hours in a month. And you can see here, Julie and her family are using twice that. Getting up to this August, she was pushing 2,000 kilowatt hours. So, all right. This is high usage year round. And look at this, there's even a little mini spikes in the winter, December, January. So what's going on here? Well, when I see high usage year round, first thing I will ask generally is, how many refrigerators do you have? Refrigerators use a lot of electricity. Generally, things that heat and cool using electricity use the most energy. If you're heating something with electricity or you're cooling something. So heaters, of course, space heaters, and then cooling, refrigerators, air conditioners, dehumidifiers. I talked to somebody once who we couldn't figure out why their bill was so high, and it turns out there was a dehumidifier that they'd kind of forgotten about in the basement. And that dehumidifier was set to achieve a much higher level of dehumidity than was possible. So that little thing, which was about 10 or 15 years old, was just down in the basement, just trucking along all the time. That's like having a little air conditioning running all the time. So I have talked to Julie. They do have more than one refrigerator. She also has a pretty large family. She's got several children. They have gaming consoles, TVs, things like that. Julie's spouse also works from home. So they are using electricity 24 hours a day. There's always somebody home. It's not like the house is just vacant for big stretches of the day. And according to Julie, maybe throwing her husband under the bus a little bit, she does say that he's a bit of a techno geek, a gadget addict. So they've got a lot of things that plug in. And then as for this little winter peak here, apparently there's an addition on her home that is heated with an electric heat pump. So this is probably what accounts for this higher usage here. I used to show my own ComEd bills for these kinds of presentations, but I myself live in a pretty small apartment in Chicago, and people get kind of mad at me when they looked at my little bill. So I don't do that anymore. But even I have a little bit of a little spike in the winter, probably because I'm using more just lights. It's a little darker, need the lights on for more hours. But also I like Christmas lights in December, and so you can kind of definitely see my my Christmas light addiction here. So, I'm wordy, aren't I? That's only thing number 2 I look at on a bill. Thing number 3, finally, is the meter reading information. And so, as you can see, I was feeling paranoid and I redacted the heck out of Julie's bill here. And I even redacted her meter number for some reason. So you can't get Julie's meter number, whatever you're going to do with it, you can't. But I left that 2 visible. The front of her, the first digit of her meter number is the number 2. And I left that visible because that means she has one of the new meters from ComEd. ComEd is done installing the smart meters throughout their territory. So all of us should have one of these new meters. And when they switched out your meter, they changed your meter number to one that starts with the number 2. So what that tells me is, A, you should never get another estimated bill again. If you have a meter number that starts with 2 and you see the word estimate over here, either related to your previous reading or your present bill, you should call ComEd and find out why they're not actually reading your meter. I have yet to see this. Everyone who has a new meter is getting actual reads, but one day it'll probably happen and I want to know why. So give me a call too. But you shouldn't see estimated bills here anymore. It doesn't seem like a big deal, but this actually used to be a source of a lot of complaints we used to get at Cub before these meters got switched over. But should be a thing of the past now that we have the new meters. B, if you have a new meter from ComEd or Ameren, I'm going to show you an Ameren bill, don't worry. That also means that you can take advantage of some special programs that, as I alluded to earlier, will give you a financial incentive to use less energy at peak times, because these new meters measure not just like how much energy you used over like during 1 month. It can actually get more granular than that, and it can actually measure what time of day the energy is being used. And I'll explain, of course, in a few slides why that is important. So those are basically the 3 things I check when I look at an electric bill. Going back to Julie's usage here, I would talk to her a little bit about some of the efficiency programs that are available through ComEd. And there's one that is great that's called a home energy assessment that I'll get to in just a second. But first, I just need to get this out of the way, talk a little bit about these alternative energy suppliers. Now, I suspect that most of the people on this webinar right now are Cub members or at least receive the Cub emails. And if you have been anywhere around our sphere for any period of time, you should probably know that we don't generally recommend switching to an alternative energy supplier, right? Most of them are way overpriced. A law was passed recently that is, we hope, going to bring some of them under control, but they haven't gone away. And we're still seeing a lot of solicitations out there from ones that market themselves as selling green energy. So really quick, what does that mean? If a company that shall remain nameless, I won't call them out by name, sends you a big piece of mail and they say, ComEd customer, you can now sign up for 100% renewable energy at your home. Does that mean that the juice, the electricity that is charging your laptop or lighting your light bulbs is actually coming from a solar farm or wind turbine somewhere? No. The grid is the grid, and the grid at any one time is being fed by all different kinds of generators. If there's a wind farm somewhere in the western part of the state, say, and you have subscribed to a clean energy plan, a green energy plan, it's not like they can give those electrons leaving that wind farm your address so that they can swim through the grid to get to your house. No, it just gets plopped onto the grid and then it's just part of the big mix. And honestly, the problem we have with these companies that market green energy is that there's really very little oversight over how they're spending your money. So as you can see, I was pretty grumpy when I made this slide. Basically, when these alternative energy companies market themselves as green, They are taking some of your money, and first they're charging you more, right? So you pay a premium for your electricity. It's going to be more than you would pay ComEd or Ameren. Then they take some of your money, we don't know how much, and purchase renewable energy certificates on your behalf. Now, renewable energy certificate is basically an indirect way to support the construction of renewable generation somewhere. So if you were a business person and you built a wind farm somewhere, once that wind farm is built and connected to the electric system, you can then sell two things. You can sell the actual electricity that that wind farm produces, and you can also sell the renewable energy certificate. The market for renewable energy certificates was basically developed as a way to further incentivize the construction of renewable generation. But the problem is, again, not a lot of oversight. What CUB and actually a lot of environmental groups suspect is that these companies that market themselves as green are basically purchasing old renewable energy certificates affiliated with wind farms that were built over a decade ago that may not even be connected to the local grid. There's a glut of cheap wind RECs coming out of Texas right now that we suspect a lot of these companies are doing. So long story short, think twice before you go all in for a green energy supplier because it isn't always what it appears. And in fact, there are much more direct ways to do your part for the environment here in Illinois than overpaying an alternative energy supplier. I am done with that for now. I mentioned the home energy assessment. If you live in ComEd territory and you also have Peoples Gas, North Shore Gas, or Nicor Gas at your house, you are entitled to a free personalized energy assessment where they will schedule a time for a professional to come out to your home and install a bunch of energy saving items in your house for free, including faucet aerators, high pressure, low flow shower heads. If you have any old fashioned light bulbs around, and you're okay with them replacing them, they'll replace them with LEDs for free. If you have exposed hot water pipes, say in your basement, they'll put some insulation on that for free. And if you have an old-fashioned thermostat, they will install a programmable thermostat and program it for you also for free. These two items here, this is a smart power strip. This is designed basically to cut down on the phantom power that appliances can use when they're not actually on. This costs money, but it'll be installed at a discount for you if you want during your assessment. And then this here is a picture of a smart thermostat. This too also wouldn't be free, but they would install it for you and provide it to you at a discount if you chose it. Great program. More people should take advantage of it. On hold right now, unfortunately, for obvious reasons. We don't need people going from house to house in this day and age. But you can contact them and get on the list to schedule an appointment once our society is able to open back up. And this is a great program. In Chicago, it used to be called the Home Energy Jumpstart Program, and that's a nice way of thinking of it. It's kind of a foot in the door to get you thinking about things to do to curb your energy usage. And like I said, you get some free stuff out of it. Okay, I hope so there's some Ameren customers with us today. This is a picture of an Ameren bill. I just wanted to show you really quickly that it's the same three things we check on an Ameren bill as we do on a ComEd bill, but of course it looks a little different. So on this Ameren bill, on page 1 is where you'll find the energy usage charts. So the therm usage, and I am not going too much into gas bills on this presentation because honestly, there are just way too many gas companies in Illinois for it to be efficient to do so for a statewide program like this. But we are doing some more local webinars where if you're more interested in kind of like the local utility. So, you know, we have Nicor, we have Peoples Gas, we have Ameren, there's a North Shore Gas. So I didn't get too much into that, but I'll just say that energy usage chart for gas will basically be the reverse usually of electric, because for gas, of course, most of Illinois heats with gas, and so you have higher winter usage and lower summer usage. Now, this family's usage for gas is actually extremely low. On the coldest month here, February, they only used, blocks it, but looks like it was less than 200 therms. That's actually quite low. I'm expecting to see usage for a single family home in the winter more like 300 therms in a cold month. Now they're making up for it on the electric side. So apparently this is somebody that my colleague met at an event, and they, for some reason, are supplementing their gas heat with electric space heaters. And you can tell by looking at this bill, the electric usage in the winter months is quite high, higher than we would expect to see even someone using air conditioning in the summer. That's because space heaters, electric space heaters, are notoriously inefficient. They use a lot of electricity. So if your gas heat isn't getting you warm enough, you might want to look at maybe some weatherization, adding some attic insulation or something like that, because a little space heater is probably going to end up costing you a lot more. And that's what we're seeing here. And then their usage in the summer months, about what we would expect to see. In the non-summer months, a little higher than average, but just so you have an idea. There are efficiency programs available from Ameren that I'll talk about in a sec. And then on page 3 of the bill, that's where we can see that the person has a new meter. They actually have just a separate line here that says smart meter. And then you can also look and see who the supplier is. Much like on the ComEd side, generally just being with Ameren for your supply is going to be your best bet. But you really need to look at the per kilowatt hour rate. A lot of towns in Ameren territory have switched their residents over to another supplier. One really common supplier we see in Ameren territory is Homefield Energy. The Homefield bills that I've seen recently are pretty close to the Ameren rate. I've seen a lot of towns that maybe are a few fractions of a cent more expensive than Ameren. So, you know, you can switch back to Ameren and save yourself a little bit of money. But I haven't seen anything too far out, for at least for the municipal electric deals. But same thing goes basically in Ameren territory, is that switching to an alternative supplier isn't really going to save you money anymore. There was a period where it could, but that period is long gone now, and most folks are better off just sticking with the utility for their electric supply. Ameren also has a free energy saving product program for multi-unit buildings. So if you have Ameren in your building of 3 or more units, the building owner can schedule the assessment. And then there is a similar program for single family homes in Ameren territory, but it's only for people who qualify as income qualified. And we have the charts here listing what counts as income qualified for that program for Ameren territory and for ComEd territory. There is an income qualified program in ComEd territory as well that can help offset some of the weatherization costs for ComEd customers. There are other electric incentives to help you be more efficient. The appliance recycling program is on hold, unfortunately, but once again, our society reopens. You can, that old fridge that's just sitting in your basement with maybe 1 6-pack in it that's using a ton of electricity, you call the utility and they'll haul it away and recycle it for you, and they will credit your bill for the honor of doing that. The ComEd credit is $35, the Ameren credit is $50. And then ComEd has an adder. If you recycle a working room air conditioner at the same time, they'll give you an extra $10, which actually I wish I had an extra fridge, because I do have an old air conditioner that I could use somebody to come and take away because I don't need it anymore. Then there are rebates around central air conditioning. If it's time for you to invest in high efficiency AC or water heat, etc., you can get some of that money back through utility rebates. Now, I'd like to say that any contractor worth his salt would know about this and hook you up with it, but it behooves you to do your research and find out about those incentives yourself, just so you're on top of that if you do decide to move forward with that. And then there are separate gas efficiency programs available for NICOR customers, Peoples Gas, and North Shore customers. That I won't read this to you. We'll send around a link later on with more details about how that works. But a lot of these programs are unfortunately on hold, but you can still study up on them so you're ready to go once everything is back in action. Okay, how's everybody doing? That's actually what my cat looks like right now. He is snoozing away. It's 10:40, which is good. That means I have plenty of time to talk about the fun stuff. So time to wake up, take a little stretch, have a little drink of water. Okay. So this is the part that I like to talk about, your new choices. So everything that I've been talking about up until now has probably been pretty easy to understand, like this is kind of how we interact with the electric grid. And I'm going to be talking mostly about electric now for the rest of this. We got our traditional electric rates, which is just how they've always been. But as I have referred to earlier, there are some new options, especially the ones aimed at encouraging us to reduce our usage of electricity at high usage times. The first one is the peak time rebate. This is the one that we call all carrot, no stick. It's the kind of thing that pretty much everybody should be on because there's no risk. Or if you want to go all the way, you can get on one of the real-time pricing programs, which ComEd calls hourly pricing and Ameren calls Power Smart pricing. Don't worry, I will explain. So this here is a screenshot of a day in my life. So I am able to log into my ComEd account and look at how much electricity I use by the hour. So I checked this. This is actually a slide I made not long after Cub staff started working from home. So as you can see, this is from Thursday, March 26th. I was working from home, and you can see what my usage chart was doing. So what was I doing? What accounts for these peaks here? So can kind of recreate my day. I made a little breakfast, ran my coffee maker. I used my toaster oven. Pretty sure that's what that's about. Then in the middle of the day, I ran my dishwasher. I mentioned I have a little apartment, so the thing in my apartment that uses the most electricity by far is my dishwasher. And I don't usually run it in the middle of the day, A, because I'm on hourly pricing and it's cheaper overnight, but B, because the suckers are really loud. And I hate listening to it when I'm trying to work, but I really needed dishes. So I ran my dishwasher in the middle of the day, and that's why you have that spike in usage. And then I love my toaster oven. I used it again to make dinner a little early, around 6, 7, and that's what accounts for that little peak. And then I was kind of watching some TV and stuff, and around here is when I was asleep, so usage was back down to just a couple of night lights and maybe my radio. You can do the same thing if you live in Ameren territory. You can log into your Ameren account online and look up how my usage changes hour by hour and see a similar chart. So this is actually the chart for a colleague of mine at Cub. They get up really early. So coffee pot went on. Okay, didn't get up. The coffee pot woke itself up really early in the morning there. Then they have an exercise machine, and that, for this day at least, was the culprit behind the highest energy usage over the course of the day. Did some making some lunch, and then watched a little TV in the evening. And so you can do that yourself. Think about it. When do you use the most electricity in your home? Think about those things that heat and cool with electricity. Think about your appliances that you use to dry your hair, cook your food, or wash your dishes. Now, extend that thinking to our civilization. When does society use the most electricity? Well, it's a little different right now, but under normal circumstances, it's when businesses are open, factories are running, retail shops, schools, all of that good stuff. But when do we really use the most electricity? When it's hot out. Air conditioning is the biggest culprit when it comes to spikes in energy demand. Excuse me. I'm going to use this chart to explain. So this is my beautiful chart. This represents a day, and the horizontal axis is the time of day, and the vertical axis is the price. And I apologize for my ComEd centric. You can just kind of get rid of this and enter about 5 cents for Ameren territory. But basically, it goes like this. If you're on just the regular old ComEd rate, it doesn't matter if you're using your coffee maker at 6 a.m. or 6 p.m. or blow drying your hair at noon or midnight. The price you pay for electricity is always the same. If you are with Ray's overpriced alternative energy supplier, same deal, can't resist, same deal, just more expensive. The actual price of electricity for most of the year is down here. So what's with that? How come if the actual price that the generators are getting for electricity is down here, how come we're all paying this? And keep in mind, the utility, whether it's ComEd or Ameren, doesn't make money off of the electricity itself. ComEd and Ameren make their money off of delivering it to your house. So it's not like it's a ComEd or Ameren markup. Well, the situation is, and this is an oversimplification, but this is basically what we need to know. Excuse me, is when this happens. This yellow line here represents what happens to the electric prices on a really hot summer weekday. This spike here is what's expensive. So think about, what is this? This generally happens in the afternoon, early evening. Think about, again, when are we using the most electricity? It's when we're using air conditioning. And when is the most air conditioning running? When it's a hot summer weekday, when you have offices running, shops are open, malls, factories, everything's running, and people are starting to get home from work and school and are starting to turn on their air conditioning and do their chores also. That's generally when we see these spikes in electric demand. And those spikes are a problem. They're expensive. Here in Illinois, we build power plants that sit idle all year, only to be turned on during those few hours in the summer when this spike happens. And these suckers are expensive, right? They're expensive to build, they're expensive to connect to the electric grid, they're expensive to fuel, they're expensive to man, and fueling. Notice that this is not a wind farm. This is not a solar array. This is a natural gas-fired power plant. And remember what this looks like. This is actually a picture of one in Illinois. Excuse me. You remember what these look like, you'll start seeing them around. They generally have a little row of relatively short little stacks, and you'll see a whole bunch of power lines coming out of it. This is a natural gas peaker plant. You can't just turn on the wind to blow when we have this spike in demand. You can't force the sun to shine when you have the spike in demand. In fact, you think about it, the peak in solar energy production is earlier in the day. It's at noon, of course, but our peak in usage is a little later in the day. Sorry. So we have to build these just to meet our energy needs at these few spiky times of year. And this is a lot of what drives up the prices year round, not to mention the fact that it's burning a fossil fuel, and whatever your opinions might be about that, that is also more expense and nobody wants one of these in their neighborhood. And so my point is, if we don't want to have to spend the money on building these, and we don't want to have more of these in everybody's neighborhood, we need to get smarter about flattening. It's something actually you hear a lot right now, in a different context, flattening this curve here. So how can we do that? We can do that through programs like the peak time rebate or hourly pricing. And so I'm going to show you some prettier versions of these charts. I showed you my kind of homemade version. This is a screenshot from the ComEd hourly pricing website. This is from March 30th. This is actually, I think, yeah, no, that's not the same date as I showed you my usage. So this is March 30th this year. This is what the ComEd prices did. The blue line is what they expected the prices to do, and the red line is what the prices actually did. I took the screenshot in the afternoon, so I don't know what it ended up doing, but you actually can go onto the hourly pricing website and look up any day you'd like. You can even download pricing tables and see what the prices do. You can look up your own hourly usage and compare it to the pricing tables. You can really nerd out if you're anything like me, but generally this is kind of what it looks like this time of year. So you can see this is 0 cents a kilowatt hour. This is 2.5 cents a kilowatt hour. So pretty much all day, it was less than half of what the actual price, the standard price for kilowatt hour was. So most people would save money being on the ComEd hourly pricing program. Not everybody, all right? It's not for everybody. On the ComEd side, there is a capacity charge affiliated with this program. So in addition to paying the per kilowatt hour rate, if you're on hourly pricing, there is an individually calculated capacity charge for you that it's hard to calculate on your own. You would need to call ComEd to find out what that would be. But I actually encourage you to do so because ComEd did something really smart with this program. They hired an excellent nonprofit organization called Elevate Energy to administer this program for them. So we'll send you the fact sheet about this, but if you go on this website and you do a live chat with somebody, or if you call their number, they will identify themselves as being with ComEd, but they're actually going to be a really nice, smart person from this organization called Elevate. And they will help guide you through the decision-making process over whether this would be a good deal for you. They don't want you to sign up for hourly pricing if it's not going to save you money. So I recommend calling them up and talking it through. The typical average savings is about 16% off of the standard ComEd supply rate, but that varies quite a bit. I myself am saving more than that. I'm saving about 40% because my capacity charge is very low. But that's something to look into. And then there's a version for Ameren as well. This is just a chart from the same website just showing a hot summer day. So I just wanted to show you one of these little spikes. 4 p.m., that's generally when you see it. Price went up to a little 5 point something cents a kilowatt hour. So, most overnight it was 2 cents, got up to about 3 point something, then went up to that. You do see higher spikes than that depending on the day. So like I said, this program is not without risk, but generally if you can do most of your washing and ironing and stuff at these off-peak times, there's a really good chance that you can save some money on this program. Power Smart pricing with Ameren is similar. The savings, because the Ameren price is itself already so low, the savings isn't quite as high, but it's still savings, and you don't have the problem with the capacity charge on Power Smart pricing like you do on the ComEd side. The Ameren program has I think $2.25 charge through it. So as long as your savings is higher than $2.25 a month, you're going to save some money on this. And so you can see here, this same day for Ameren, the price only barely got over 2 cents a kilowatt hour over the course of that day. Elevate runs the Power Smart pricing program for Ameren also. So again, I encourage you to call them if you're interested. Just to boast, here's my hourly pricing results. Like I said, I'm saving over 40% by being on it myself. I've been on it for about 1.5 years, and I've saved over $100 by being on the program myself. And then I don't have an electric car and I don't have electric heat, but if I did, I would save even more money by being on these programs. Because think about it, if you're plugging in your car to charge it overnight, well, gee, overnight is when the prices are super low, so you'll save even more money. And then if you have electric heat, you're using a lot of electricity in the winter when traditionally the hourly prices for electricity are pretty low. So this is even more of a no-brainer if you have electric car or electric heat in your home. And then finally, the peak time rebate. This is the all carrot, no stick program. This is kind of like a light version of these programs where instead of paying the real-time price that changes every hour for your electricity, you basically just get an extra little bit of money off your bill if you are able to reduce your usage at those peak times. So ComEd calls it peak time savings. Ameren calls it peak time rewards. Basically, they'll send you a text message or an email in advance of a peak, an anticipated peak. And if you reduce your usage, ComEd will give you $1 off your bill for every kilowatt hour you save. And Ameren, we don't know how much they're going to give you quite yet because the market that the money that supplies the money to cover the costs of this program in Ameren territory is a little different. So the margins are not quite as high. But nobody's going to get rich off of the peak time rebate. It's basically just a little added perk. I like to think of it almost as a educational program that kind of just gets people thinking about these peak times and when they're using their electricity. ComEd has an air conditioning cycling program, which is guaranteed $5 or $10 off your bill in the summer months. That's for people who have central air conditioning. They will connect a device to your central AC unit that can cycle off the compressor during those peak times. I know that sounds scary. I myself would hesitate to give ComEd control over my air conditioning. But I tell you this, in all honesty, I've never met anyone who noticed a problem. Part of that is because they're very loath to actually exercise this power, but also they cycle off the compressor, but the fan stays on. So there's still air circulating and it won't really change the temperature in your home by more than a degree or two. And they do it very seldom. So that's another program that's available that's kind of related. It's about reducing that peak usage. All right, I've got just a few minutes, so I'm going to fly through these slides. And we actually did a webinar all about solar, and we will be doing more. So if you really want to dive into solar, make sure you're signed up for our e-newsletters, and you will be alerted to more opportunities to learn about this. But basically, I just wanted to say that the rumors are true. This is a really good time to go solar in Illinois because of a combination of just technological advancements, the sinking costs of the solar panels themselves, state incentives, thanks to the Future Energy Jobs Act that passed in 2016. The state will actually pay you for your renewable energy credits if you install solar. And then there's still a federal tax credit. If something doesn't happen in US Congress, it is going to go away after the year 2021. But for now, there is still a federal tax credit that can offset a lot of your solar system costs as well. We do have enough sun in Illinois. If you've been to any kind of solar presentation, you've probably seen this slide. I'm not going to belabor it, but we have enough sun. If Germany has enough sun to be the highest per capita solar adopter in the world, we definitely do here in Illinois. If you do get solar at home, you probably, to make it economically feasible, will want to connect it to the external grid so that if your panels produce excess power, you can get credited on your ComEd or Ameren bill for that excess. You will need an inverter with your solar system that basically converts the direct current power that the panels produce to alternating currents so that you can actually use the electricity the panels produce. And then just a little bit about these federal tax credits. Right now, for the rest of this year, the tax credit will cover 26% of your system costs. That goes down next year to 22%. And then after that, unless something happens, it goes away. I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, community solar. If you're like me and you live in an apartment, or you don't own your house, or your roof can't handle it, or you have too much shade, or there's some reason why you can't actually install solar at your own house, you can participate in community solar. And this is basically the program where you can subscribe to a share of a solar garden somewhere in your utility's territory, and then you get credited directly on your electric bill for your portion of the energy that that solar garden produces. This program is just getting up and running in the state of Illinois. We've started to see a handful of companies peddling solar subscriptions. The two big ones are called Nexamp and Clearway. We have a blog post about them. There's another company called Arcadia. You may have heard of them because they did a giant mailing last fall across the whole state. And that mailing marketed their product as community solar as well, but it's a little different. We have a blog post about them too. We'll send out links to those after this webinar, which is done. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. It is 11:01. I appreciate your bearing with me. I can hang out for as long as you can. Well, actually, I have another one of these at noon, so within reason, I can hang out to answer any questions, and please feel free to reach out to us if you have even more in-depth questions. We'll try to get to as many as we can right now, but we at CUB pride ourselves on answering our email and our phone calls, so don't ever hesitate down the road to reach out to us if there's any way that we can be of help. And I really appreciate you guys taking the time to check this out. And with that, I'm eager to hear if anybody does have questions. So CUB colleagues, if you'd like to read me any, I'll do my best to answer.
Hi, Sarah. Can you hear me?
I can.
Awesome. So our first question, someone asks, will I ever be able to get rid of my old dehumidifier? Last year, they offered $10, but you need a fridge too.
That is a good question. I think, and there actually used to be a dehumidifier portion to that efficiency program where they could, but I think they even got rid of that part. I think the issue has to do with the cost efficacy of that. I think it just all depends on the economics. So CUB is actually a member of a stakeholder advisory group that is basically a group of organizations and utilities that work to try to improve on the efficiency programs. All of the efficiency programs in Illinois have to pass what they call a total resource cost test. And so that's basically the test of cost efficacy for these programs. And I think what happened with the dehumidifiers is that they just couldn't justify the costs of sending somebody out to your house and then recycling the dehumidifier with the energy savings that it availed. But the tests, yield different results under different conditions as time goes on. So it may happen. I don't think that's something that is actually going to happen in the near term. The programs are going to be updated in June, but I haven't heard anything at this point that would indicate any major changes. But I can add that to the list of things that our person at CUB can ask about the next time we go to one of these stakeholder advisory group meetings. So that's a long way of saying I'm not sure. I don't see it in the immediate future, unfortunately.
Awesome, thank you. We have another question here. Do you know a source of hourly temperatures to compare to Ameren's hourly usage rates in the manner shown for the ComEd usage example?
Oh, really good point. I think that might be available either on Ameren's website, or if it's not, let me think. I don't actually know if the Ameren chart shows the temperatures. The ComEd charts, you can access the temperatures, but that's something I'd have to look up for you. That's a really good question.
Awesome. Someone has a question here. Is it wise or efficient to shut off your heat or AC as a way of controlling your energy usage costs?
Great question, controversial question, because a lot of people have heard different things, and there's a lot of myths floating around. Generally, if you are not at home, you don't need it to be on. I know a lot of people believe, and I've heard some contractors say this, that it can take so much energy just to bring your home back to the temperature you want it to be once you do get home. That can offset any savings. I've heard a lot of other contractors say that that is a myth. I tend to fall on the side that I think that is to a large extent a myth. Probably the safest way to go would be to at least just turn down the heat or AC when you're not at home, and then just bring it back to normal when you come home. Or if you have a smart thermostat, of course, you can actually set it to turn itself back up before you get home if you want it to be nice and comfortable by the time you walk in. But generally, it just doesn't make much sense to be running something at full steam if there's nobody there to feel it. I had a boyfriend I used to argue with a lot just about fans. He loved to keep fans on in rooms where nobody was. And you're just moving air around. And the way a fan works is that's evaporating, the moisture on your skin. It's not actually cooling down the air temperature in a space. So there's no need for a fan to be on if you're not there. So all of that is to say that it's hard to get it. I've talked to a lot of professionals about this, and it's been like pulling teeth getting them to come down firmly on this topic. And so that is why I am, as you can tell, refusing to come down firmly on this topic. But we generally don't recommend keeping the stuff on when you're not home. It just doesn't make much sense.
Great. Someone also asks, I have solar on my house since last August. Will real-time pricing be a good deal for me?
That's a really good question. I think one of the first things to do would be to look up your home energy usage chart and see how that lines up. I've talked to some solar installers who don't like to recommend real-time pricing because it's so cheap, it actually throws off the payback period for the solar system, if that makes sense. Basically, like if you're doing the math on how quickly you make your money back after installing a solar system, you make your money back a lot more quickly the more expensive the electricity is, right? So some solar installers, kind of, disreputably, I would argue, don't want people to sign up for that because then that makes the payback period not look as good. But if you've already made the investment, it can save you some money off of that electricity that you end up paying. So I would look at my usage charts, and again, I would definitely call the number for whether if you're in ComEd territory, hourly pricing, or Ameren territory, Power Smart pricing, and talk through this with them. You can give the reps there access, the permission to look at your hourly usage, and they can also look up, if you're in ComEd territory, your capacity charge, and that will go a long way into making the calculation for your own individual home.
Great. There are a couple of questions, but I think we will answer those individually. But someone does say, can we share this webinar on LinkedIn?
Oh, how flattering. That would be excellent. Yes, I would be pleased if folks would. We'll send, like I said, we'll send around the link once once we've wrapped everything up.
I guess we can give a little bit more time. It's 11:09 now, but there seems to be no more questions.
All righty. Well, thank you again, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you, Anaides, for moderating and fielding the questions. And I hope I made my point clear that CUB is here. We want to hear from you. We want to know what kinds of questions you have and what kinds of issues you have down the road. Hopefully you won't have any utility-related issues, but if you ever do, we are here. So thank you again for tuning in, folks, and stay safe, stay healthy, and do your best to enjoy your spring, okay? So long.